Okay, I'm going to do a quick demo on forms here in advance of your Friday evening lab, the last one, week 4. Woohoo! Okay, so forms are just a way of, in HTML, of grabbing data from the user. They fill in forms. There are text forms, email forms, password forms, radio buttons, checkboxes, etc., etc. And it's all just a way of getting information from the user, which is either passed from page to page using get values or sent to the server using post values. And that's a method that you can put onto your HTML form. Generally, if it's getting posted, it's going to be sent to a PHP page or something like that that's going to process the data that's been submitted by the user, and then it will get sent usually to a database, update the database, whatever, something like that. So obviously we're not going to be able to do all that in this class, or even any of that. We'll just do the HTML stuff. And I just considered this to be too important to not do in this class. The other one being HTML tables, but there's no time. So I'm just going to start by, this is the chapter 19 thing, which I've created a new folder called chapter 13, which is the form or the chapter that you guys have just read for today, right? I'm just going to do it like, I consider this like print page. This is pretty much the bottom of the main section of the main elements. I'm going to put this sign up form here. So it's going to be where the user either is or is not already a member of this Town Hall Association, and they can sign up for a website membership, right? So presumably they're signing up for a newsletter, and then they can maybe log in and access stuff that the public can't get to, whatever. So I'm going to do a form element here, and the form element is going to have several attributes on it. Usually I'll show you what they are, and then I'll get rid of a couple of them, because if I leave them on there, they're going to mess up our testing. Because it'll be constantly throwing errors at us in the browser if we don't have these, or if we do have these in, but they don't actually do anything. So one of them is a method. So you normally see a method equals, and then either get, which I was talking about before. This is where you can pass values through the address bar between pages, or within the same page if you want to. And then method equals post is what you see most of the time. This is if you're grabbing the data that the user submitted and sending it to the back end somewhere. PHP processing page, database, schema, etc. So one of those two is what you're going to see. And then also actions. So it needs to be told, the page needs to be told, okay, where am I sending this form? So usually you'll see something like process.php, or in this case, maybe it would be, since we're asking new users to sign up, maybe it would be newuser.php, something like that, some kind of address to whatever script is processing this stuff. And then you almost always see some kind of an ID on here. So either new user or sign up or something like that. So these are the attributes that normally go onto a form element. I'm going to be getting rid of the first two just from this demo and from what you guys are doing for the lab tonight. I'm going to leave the ID on there, even though I probably don't even need it for the CSS, but just make a note of these, because this is what you will normally see, and when you do see them, that's what it means. So I'll get rid of it for now. I've got this up in a browser, but right now, as it is, just putting a form element on there is not going to even, I don't think it's going to show anything at all. Yeah, it should be right here underneath this print this page, and it's just nothing. So let's make it visible. You organize sections of a form by using a field set or multiple field sets. You can have as many as you want in there. And I've seen pages where they're just these really long forms with just field set after field set after field set. It gets pretty messy after a while. But I'm just going to do a field set, and then I'm going to do a legend. A legend is like a label or a title for the field set. So it's a sign up for a website account or something like that. Yay! And so if I save this and go over here, there it is. Now don't worry about the formatting of this, the fact that it's too close and everything. It's going to look real messy for a while, and I want you to see the messiness at first, because this is what plain HTML forms look like. I never agreed with that, but it's not up to me. So you'll get to see how yucky it looks. So anyway, we've got the field set, and now what we're going to do is we're going to put different kinds of inputs in here. Now there are form fields other than inputs. There are select menus, there are data lists, there are text areas. But most of the time, most of the fields that you're going to be using are inputs of one type or another. So it's an actual input element. So let me do the simplest one right here. Input type equals text, like so. And I'm just going to leave it like that, simple, and save and go over here on the browser. And what it does is it puts a text field that the user can type stuff into. Hooray! So you're potentially receiving data from this input from the user here. Now, it's not very much use as it is right now. So here's the thing about form fields. In order to really make any sense, they need a couple of more properties. One, they need a name, which you can think of as a property, and then like a value. And think of this as like, okay, if you were going to send something to the back end, if you're going to send something to the database, first of all, you need a category for this information, and that's the name, and then you need what the actual information is, and that would be the value of it. So some fields have like a name equals whatever and a value equals whatever, so you hard code it in. But in this case, in a text field and in text-like fields, the value is actually what's typed in by the user here. But it still needs a name no matter what. So I'm going to give it a name. This is where I want the user to choose a new username. So I'm going to say new username, and that's the name of this thing. So that's the category that will get spat off to the back end. And then, yeah, that's going to be it for right now. I'm going to put some text here at the beginning to let the user know what it is that I'm expecting them to type in. That's kind of important. And so there it is. So the user sees, oh, username. Okay, signing up for new. Okay, cool. So I put my required username in here. One of the things we don't have right now is like testing this against a database to see if the username is already taken. Yeah, later. Different class. Now, notice when I do this, like I have to click directly into the field in order to focus it. I can't click anywhere else and have it work. But I'm going to change that. This is a usability thing and also an accessibility thing for screen readers and so on. And that is to take this entire thing, this label text and the input, and wrap them into a label element, like so. So let me cut this closing tag and put it at the end here. So this whole thing, the label text and the input, they're both nested inside of the label element. So now check this out. I'm going to save this and go back over here and watch this. I can now focus this field just by clicking on the text here. That focuses the field and I can start typing. So I don't have to aim right for this. So again, it's also an accessibility thing. So it's really important actually to get labels in there. And I'm going to be requiring you guys to put labels around all of your inputs and input text. There's another way to do this, which you can have a label and input that aren't nested in one another, but then you have to match up the name and the ID or something. It's been so long since I've done it that way, I can't even recall exactly how you do it, but this is the easy method. Just go ahead and just slap them all into a label. Okay, so let me do another one. Let's do, what else do we need? So yeah, from now on, when you're going to do an input, just start by making a label. Like so, and then put your stuff inside of there. So I'm going to ask them for a password, okay? So password, and then input, and as it turns out, there is a type of the input, which is password, type equals password. And we also need a name for this one, just like a text input. This is a text-like input. New password, so it also needs a name, and then the value is going to be what the user types in here. So I say just check out the difference between these. So save these guys. If I go to username and do that, I tab over to password, I type in, and then it's hidden what I type in. It just gets the asterisks or the bullet points. There's a way to change that with JavaScript. Like if you wanted a little button that says show password, it's pretty easy to do. But for now, I just go ahead and leave it like that. That's a password. And then let's do one more of these. Start with the label. And then we want an email address. Like so. And then input. This is another text-like input. Input type equals email. And name equals new email. There's nothing special about these names, by the way. It's just that's what makes sense to me. And I say new password and new email and so on because maybe there's another form somewhere on the page for a user to log in, right? And maybe the name of that one would be just username and password instead of new username, new password, and so on. So anyway, stuff to kind of think about if you think you might have more than one form per page. Okay, so there's the username. There's our password, which is hinted, and then here's the email address, blah, blah, blah. Now, we'll get into form validation in just a little bit here. Now, I meant to put in a couple of headings here, just to show that you can. So maybe this is like, I don't know, count information or something like that. So it's just an H3 that's put into the form, into the ledger or the field set. There's nothing wrong with it. It validates. It's perfectly fine. Let's do another one, H3, and let's see, what is it we're going to put in here? I'm going to put in instructions, so I later on want to make some radio buttons about whether or not the user is already a member of the association. So let's see, I am already a member of the association, like so. So there's another H3, and then we will put a different kind of input underneath here. So this is going to be, sometimes instead of the user typing in information, you've got fields where the user is able to select from one or more options. There's even a field that is a combination of those two. It's called a data list, where you can either select from a set of drop-down options or type in your own. But I'm just going to create a simple radio group, which is just a set of options that the user can select between. Now, when you're talking radio buttons here, you generally only want to have 2. If you have much more than 2, then it starts getting, irksome to fill out, and then you would probably want to have a select menu instead. 2, maybe 3 at the most. But this is going to be, once again, start with the label, right? And these, you're going to see these, the radio buttons. What I've done here for these text-like inputs is start out with a label text, and then the field goes to the right of that. So label text and then the field. But for radio buttons and checkboxes, you do it the other way around, because it gets way too messy visually, even working with CSS when it goes the other way. So for this one, right off the bat, this is another kind of input, and it's going to be type equals radio, like so. And if I just go ahead and stop there, save there, and it puts the radio button there. You guys have all seen these on websites before, right? So that's what a radio button is. But like the other inputs, it needs to have a name and a value. I'm going to say name equals membership, because I'm asking if they already have a membership to the association. And this one, we actually have to hard code a value in. And because there's nothing for them to type, right? For these, they're typing the value, but for this one, they select from multiple values, and whichever one they choose, that's what you can send off to the back end. So for this one, to do a yes or no, let's just do value equals 1. You could do with or without quotes there in HTML, it doesn't matter. I just do that to kind of remind myself that it's going to be sent as an integer instead of a string. And then we'll say yes, and then we'll do another one here. Start off with the label, input type equals radio, name equals, now check this out. Oops, I forgot a quote here. Name equals membership. I'm going to have the same name for both of these. These both go into the same category. If I want this to be clear, let's go ahead and put these two right next to each other. Name equals membership. Everything up to this point is exactly the same, right? And it has to be. Let's do a different value here. Let's do value equals, and this is going to be 0 for no. No. Okay. So I save this and go over here, and yes or no. So check this out. This is what it means to have a radio button group, or just a radio group. It's having the same name here, but different values. And then when I select one, it selects, and then if I select the other one, wait, oops, I did the wrong thing. Let me check no instead. Boom. So I select this one, and it unchecks that one, right? That's what it means to have a radio group. Now, this wouldn't work if they just didn't have the same name. If I just do something else here, then I'll be able to check both of them, and that's not the way radio buttons are supposed to work, right? So you need to have the same name for both in order to make a radio group. Now, if you do want the user to be able to select more than one option, then instead of doing a radio button, do a checkbox. So now, to do that, all you have to do is change the type from radio to checkbox. And then when I go over here, see, it's turned into those squarish boxes here. And now I'm able to select both of them or neither of them. I can also unselect both of them, which you can't do with the radio buttons. Once you select a button, it's like the only way you can uncheck that is by checking the other one. But for these, you can do either or neither, or what have you. So you might use this for something like if you're asking people what toppings they wanted on a pizza or something. You would probably use checkboxes because they might want to have more than one topping. Okay, but this doesn't make much sense for yes or no questions, so I'm going to switch this back to radio. And here it is. I select one. I cannot uncheck it. It's got to be one or the other. It's an either or operation here. Okay, so that's all of the form fields that I'm going to show you. The only other thing I'm going to put into the form itself is I'm going to put a submit button here. And there are different ways you can do this, but I think the easiest way is just to go ahead and put a button element. Because if you put a button element inside the form, then by default, its action is to submit the form, which is nice. Otherwise, you have to do an input type equals a submit, and it's fine, but it's just a little messier. So, I don't know, yeehaw. So if I go over here and click on this, and what happens is that in the absence of an action and a method, all it does is refresh the page. That's what it does by default without anything else to work with. Okay, last thing about this. Right now, I could, as you saw, I submitted this without filling in anything, right? So then the user just, submitted this with no data whatsoever. So if you want to require some fields in HTML5, you can simply put a required attribute on here, just like that. Just required, no equals or quotes. And I'm going to put it on the username, password, and email. And I don't care so much about the membership thing, so I'll leave that one alone. But they have to do these three at least. So now if I go over here and try to submit, check it out. It's giving me a little bit of form validation there. It used to be we had to do form validation on JavaScript or on the back end in PHP or what have you, but now it's built into, some of it at least, built into HTML5. So I put it in username, try to submit. Nope, I need to do an email address. Now check this out. I just typed something in without the @ Oh wait, this is the password. I'm sorry. See how confusing this is? I'm doing the password. Nope, I still need to fill out the email. So, okay, here's the email address. And I'm going to put something in without the @ or the dot. And I try to submit, and it's not going to let me do it. So it needs, for an email address, for the input type equals email, you have to not only type something in for the required, but you also have to get it into the right format. And then I'll leave these two blank, and it shouldn't care about those. And then now it submits. So this is nice. This is front-end HTML5 validation. We didn't used to have that. It's really awesome that we do. Okay, so there we go with the form validation. And this is just about the end of the demo here. I just wanted to take you into the CSS real quick because obviously this looks horrific. It all looks horrific. It's bad enough that you saw. I just typed this in and I got confused about what was going with what. So it's also like a usability thing for sure. So let me go to the CSS here, and I will go to, I don't know, where's that print button of mine? Somewhere in here. There's the button, so yeah, let's just go ahead and put it right underneath here, right before the figures, I think. So this will be the form. And first of all, I'm going to try to style that field set, just so it's not quite so crunched in here. So field set. And let's give it a padding of, I don't know, 1M. And maybe a bit more than that. Let's try 2M. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Now some margin top to get it away from that other button. Margin top. I think I've been using 1Ms for those distances. So yeah, that'll do fine. Okay, now the important one. That stuff wasn't important. This is important, is getting this jacked up stuff fixed so that we actually know which field goes with which label text here. So it's actually pretty simple to get started at least. I'm going to remember we put those into labels. Well, not only is that an important for accessibility and usability thing, but it actually gives us a nice little CSS hook as well. So if I do label display flex like we've been doing, well, all of a sudden things are looking better. Now it still looks horrible, but now it's usable. Now I can see easily which field goes with which text at least. So thank goodness for that, right? That was horrible. Let's go ahead and do input flex 1. This is going to get it flexy and stretchy so that these guys stretch all the way across. And then I don't want them touching the text here. So let's give them a margin. And I'm going to give them margins all the way around because I want to push these away from each other as well. So let's see, no margin top, no margin right. I don't need that. I need a margin bottom and a margin left. So let's do margin 0, 0, 0.5M for bottom, right? Top right, bottom, and then left. There we go. Starting to look good. Too close to the H3, but I'm not too worried about that. I mean, there's plenty of other stuff you can do. I would also want to add more padding to these inputs, probably. I don't know. Let's just try padding 0.5. This might screw everything up, but you see, it just makes them larger, and then you would want to probably like center these within there and so on. So there's plenty of other stuff you can do. I'm not going to bother with that for right now. I'm just going to leave it like this. But then you can see how badly it's messed up these guys over here because they're in a different order, basically. So I'm going to show you a different kind of selector here. I'm going to select for the inputs, but not the inputs that I just did, but just for these inputs. How do I do that? Well, there's something in CSS3 called attribute selectors. In fact, the simplest ones existed in CSS2 as well. That means I can select for whether or not an element has an attribute. I can select for the, if it has a particular value for a particular attribute. And there's plenty of other things you can do with it too. This is just the bare bones beginning. But let me just say, yeah, we can select for the input that has a type of radio, and we'll ignore the rest of these guys. So let's go ahead and do that. Underneath this one, I'm going to do input, and check out the syntax here. Square brackets, type equals radio. And that will select. So it says, okay, look for an input that has a type attribute and whose value is radio. So input type equals radio. We could just as easily do, what do we call those guys? Membership, right? Name equals membership. We could do name equals membership. And it would do exactly the same thing. It would look for an input that has a name attribute with a membership value. So that would also select for those two radio buttons. But I'm going to change it back to this because this is a tool that is invaluable when you're styling forms, and other numerous other things it's useful for. Okay, so let's get this in here, and I'll do a flex 0 to override that flexiness, so you can see that crowded these over to the left. These are still looking fine, and I'm going to change the margin. This time we only want a margin right to separate the text. We don't want margin anywhere else around those guys like we did for the text like field. So let's go ahead and do margin, let's see, top right, bottom left, and there we go. That looks fine. So if I now did, let's see, form H3 and did like a margin 0.5M top and bottom and 0 left and right, push those guys a little farther away from each other, etc., etc. So at this point, I'm going to stop. You can find all kinds of great tutorials online for how to actually make your forms look good. This is not really a good looking form yet, but it does meet the basics of usability and accessibility, I think. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you much. See you guys tonight.